Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Design and Move. My name is Ryan and I'm here with our crew today.
You got it. My name is Hunter Schweitz. I'm a movement specialist here at Fluid Health and Fitness.
And I'm Ashley Laborde, Doctor of Physical Therapy. I work at Pure Strength Physical Therapy and Performance Training.
Today guys, we're going to go into another topic on the shoulders, and this time we're going to talk about the asymmetry of the shoulders. We want to start off by giving you a brief description of how the body is supposed to look in terms of its anatomic positioning. Oftentimes muscles in the front of the body, like the hip flexors and the quads, will pull the pelvis downward and create an excess pressure or curve of the lumbar spine. You can notice that if this goes even further, so if I pull it down further, the rib cage will elevate and ascend. This places all the muscles that attach from the rib cage to the shoulders into an altered position and can impact the health of the movement of the shoulder joint. Traditionally, we all have one side of the body that's overworked or overused. We use it all the time. And because of which, it's going to create a one-side dominance and pull the pelvis down just on one side. So we'll see that as a tipping of the pelvis anteriorly or down towards the floor. What we don't know is that by doing that, it actually creates a functional leg length increase. Unfortunately, the floor gets in the way of that leg, so the hip has nowhere to go but up. When that goes up, it creates a convexity, or again, a curvature of the spine that leads to an ascension of the opposite hemisphere. Now, due to which, the shoulder blade that lays on top of the rib cage on that side of the body elevates and appears to be higher than the other. So instead of the muscles that attach directly from the shoulder blade to the rib cage acting on that shoulder, making it look ascended, it's actually the positioning of the shoulder on the rib cage. So we love what we're going to talk about. We hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, make sure to like and subscribe, or you can reach us at our website at fluidhealthandfitness.com, or you can reach out to Ashley.
My website is pureyoga.us and click on the tab that says Pure Strength.
All right, guys. So again, a lot of information to cover. We want to get right into it. Let's get started.
One of the shortened muscles that we'll talk about in this distortion is the quadratus lumborum, aka QL. We'll call it QL from here on just so it's a little less awkward because that's a long
Yeah, it's going to be awkward.
Right, right. And so this muscle is often responsible for that one-sided or both sides, that back pain that people get. And the muscle itself runs from the spine all the way out to kind of that pelvis. Some people think of it as the hip. So as you're looking, it's basically right there. When that gets shortened, as you can see, it creates that side to get compressed and elevated, and it can cause the other side to have the dysfunction that we're going to talk about today. So what we're going to show you how to do is use this awesome lacrosse ball to actually release that QL muscle so that it's not as tight and shortened, and try to get that length back so then we're dropping down that side of your hip, pelvis, and low back.
So we'll need that lacrosse ball. We have a table here, you can do it on the ground. When we first started this, we talked about the right side being compressed and the left side coming up and the shoulder lifting. And we do that because the liver lays underneath the rib cage and it helps to pull the rib cage down so that it can actually assist the oblique in holding that whole rib in that fixed position. So a lot of times the left side will be ascended. That's not always the case, but it is traditionally the case. So if you're questioning and you have a partner, you can actually watch from behind, and if you watch Hunter, he's going to breathe in deep. You're going to watch his ribs expand, and you'll see one side will lift up higher than the other. And then that's going to tell us where we're going to put the ball.
If you're watching his shoulders, it will look like that left shoulder is coming up higher than the right shoulder in relation. And so we know that the right side is the side that's tight. So when we go to place the ball, we're basically going to find the spots, and you can palpate on yourself. Find the spots that might be tight or tender, but it's off to the side of the spine. So you have the spine here, off to the side of the spine, on the lower portion of it, and then you're going to place the ball here, and the orientation of this muscle goes from here out and down, kind of in a lateral fashion, and it goes towards that hip area.
People often have a hard time finding it, but once you've pinpointed it, believe me, if there's some pressure there, it's going to tell you. So we're going to use that ball to start. He's going to place it behind his back and he's going to lay on the table. Now while he's in this laying position, we want to first make sure that the anchor point at the pelvis is nice and stable. So he's crossing his legs over using the tension of his hamstring to basically pull his hip under. That's going to create a nice anchor for the pelvis. And then he's going to breathe in and then breathe out. Now as he breathes out, his abdominals are actually going to pull his pelvis under, and it should intensify the pressure of the area that you're on. And if that is going on, you're probably on the QL. Okay? If you're having a hard time finding it, you can roll that ball from the side of the spine outward and go back and forth lateral to medial, and you'll pretty much find an edge. Once you're there and you find that little tender spot, put the pressure there and hold on there. Now we're going to use breathing to help to release the muscle by using the respiratory mechanics to help to pull and lengthen that muscle open. So he's going to breathe in deeply, opening the rib, arching the back. It'll take the pressure off the ball. And then he's going to breathe out deeply, imprinting his back into the ball, pulling the tailbone under, and he should feel a little bit more tension. Do you feel that? Great. So as he does this and it starts to subdue and the length of the muscle starts to let go, he can start to increase the tension by almost crunching up a little bit, bringing his rib cage off, creasing again more of a cathodic or again rounding of the spine. And as he comes up, he's going to breathe out and then laterally tilt to the opposite direction. Again, we don't want to put the muscle in pain, so we don't want it to be, too intense. But you definitely want to feel some pressure, and you're definitely going to feel that, isolate that area. As you breathe out and you come back to your base, every time you come back, if you've softened that muscle, it'll start to sink in a little bit, and you know that its passive tone is increasing, you've done the job. Okay, so we would go through about maybe 6 to 10 breathing patterns. Breathe out deep for 4, tilt gently to the left. Again, if we're targeting the right side. Once you're done and you feel that muscle relax and lengthen, we want to get into the other side of the body and actually start activating and strengthening the muscles that help to hold that rib cage down on the other side. In this case, it's going to be the external oblique. Let's get started.
Let's go.
Before we get into activating the external oblique, we want to show once again the relationship and how it can actually surface in the body. So if the right leg is functionally longer because of that discrepancy in the tension in the front of the hip, it'll shift the hip up, and if you can see his foot, we've bolstered it up off the ground to really create a gross magnitude of what that distortion looks like. So you can see how that can compress in the spine, and this compresses. Now we just use that ball right there to help to reduce that. So hike your hip up here on the left side, Hunter. Bring the lift up so that it pulled it back down. If this is compressed and compensatorily tight, then again, you would see it like so. So now that we know that, we're going to place him on the table and we're going to actually get into turning on that oblique and maintain the level pelvic alignment. Hunter's on the table and we're going to first get him set up in the right position. We want to make sure that his feet are grounded on the floor, and you'll notice his knees are bent about 90 degrees. Now what we want to do is make sure that the legs don't widen out at any point in time. We want to try to keep him within the hip line, right? So here's his hip line right here. We want him to be slightly inside of it. And you may even want to put a ball or something in there just to give you a little marker to focus on, okay? Either way, he's going to leave it floating. And then we want to try to get the air out of his lungs so that we can first define what abdominal pressure or the engagement of your abdominals really looks like. So if he breathes all the air out, he's going to find his lower back on the table. And then he's going to start feeling that abdominal pressure, right? You're going to really get a good, strong contraction of your abdominals. So that is something that you're going to want to remember, because the length of the breath out really has a strong impact on being able to make this effective over the course of time. Okay? So the other point is that he's going to support his head with his right hand. Remember, we're still working on the left hemisphere of the rib cage. He's going to support the head and brace the head into his fingertips. And this basically is going to be a little platform so that he can lift the whole torso up. I don't want him to use his arm and pull the arm in and crank his neck into extension. Okay? So he's just going to use this to support. And you can tell that it's actually the right position if you actually took your chin down and you feel a softening of the pressure on the base of the skull with your fingertips. You're not using your extensors, you're taking your neck out too excessively. Okay? So now that we have all that set up, the actual movement is going to be a forward crunch, pulling his torso up off the ground. He's going to reach his arm out into protraction, and he's going to glide the shoulder forward come up as high as we can go, and then rotate in towards the midline or plinth as much as we can without starting to compensate on the other side. Okay? So come on up. He's going to breathe all the air out, get his ribs nice and low. He's going to breathe in and lift up. Reach across, rotate, bring the rib in towards the other hip, and then breathe out slowly. Especially, what's the deal with the breath being slow out? Why is that important?
Yeah, so you want to have it nice and controlled so that you're not holding your breath, for one thing, because when you hold your breath, you create intra-abdominal pressure, and that actually creates a lot of tension around your spine and around your discs of your low back. It also helps you to get more function out of those muscles, and you're using your diaphragm to help to basically get more of the other muscles in that area kicking in and firing, and then you're kind of coordinating it with your breath to have more of a rhythm.
We know that if one side is elevated, the diaphragm might be basically hyperascended, so that the rib cage position puts the ribs or the diaphragm into a state of almost a tighter contraction. So you always trap air up in that portion of your lungs, and you're never getting a full breath. But basically, by doing that, you're never fully getting oxygen saturation. You're having a hard time being able to provide your body with the most universal necessary thing ever, and that's air. So we would do 2 sets of 20. We want to control the breathing pattern. Like Ashley said, don't brace and hold on too tight. If you have a tendency to have an under-tucked tailbone, bearing down like that can put a lot of pressure on your vertebrae and by extension lead to all sorts of bad things for your back. So we want to be nice and passive with this, and if there's back pain at all, you want to pump the brakes, probably reach out to Ashley and ask some specific questions. Okay, so we want to do 2 sets of 20, control the breath in, breathe out slowly to a count of 4, and then we're going to move into the integration. So now that we've turned down the QL and turned up the oblique, we want to feed it all into the same systems and teach the brain to cooperate with the body. And we're going to do that with a single leg balanced position, coordinating our breath and our shoulder all together. So if our rib is up, the shoulder will hike up like this. We're going to want to get it down, get the shoulder blade back on the rib cage, and as it comes back into retraction, keep that rib cage in a protracted position and let it glide around. We're going to do that by getting him into a split stance with his left leg leading. The band's going to be anchored up at the ceiling, and you could do the same thing. This is about a 3-pound to 5-pound band, not a lot of tension. And you can anchor that up at maybe a door frame, tie a knot, put it up over a door, shut the door. Right? There's plenty of ways you can do it from home. And if you need one of these exercise tubes, just visit our website. And the first things first, we want to make sure that we get the hips stable, because that's what we were talking about, right? The hips distort the spine, that distorts the ribs. So make sure that the hips are stable first, which means basically this back or our right and left ilium on the back side of his hips are going to be stacked and parallel to the floor, perpendicular to his leg. We're going to make sure that there's no excessive rotation in both of his legs. So we don't want to see that knee drop in, or we don't want to see the legs roll open. So you'll see that. And oftentimes you'll see folks kick their leg back and externally rotate it so that the heel rolls in. And they try to brace on their back leg. So we don't want to see that either. The majority of the load is going to be right on that left hip. Okay? So now that we've fixed him in the right position, he's going to pull his head back over his rib cage to keep a nice neutral cervical spine. He's going to breathe out to lock that rib cage down, and then he's going to glide the scapula around the rib cage and pull his arm around. Now, if he goes too far, he's going to pull his rib with it and show him what it looks like. And he's going to start twisting through his spine. We don't want to do that. We want to try to maintain neutral, keep that nice straight plumb line, and glide the scapula around.
And what you're going to look for from the front is, can I see both my hips? Are they level, one to the other? Are my shoulders nice and level? Is my head in line? And then as he's pulling back, he's not rotating. So that's that core strength. When you're doing a single arm movement, you have to engage core to help keep you in the right position as well. So everything looks super stable and great.
So try to keep that soft and try to keep all the pressure in that left hip, trying to hold that pelvis with your glute. That's going to help to keep that side of your body nice and strong and healthy as well. So remember, we're going to try to go through about 2 sets of 20 repetitions. It's a slow, controlled movement. Try to initiate the movement through the shoulder and then let the arm come along for the ride and coordinate your breathing. So breathe out as you pull the arm back to lock that rib down and slowly let your arm come back up into a flexed position while maintaining, again, that lumbar-pelvic stability. Awesome.
And you may start to feel it back here in these lat muscles as well, and that's an okay thing.
All right, so we've done the integration. Now we want to get into a little strength movement. So let's wrap it up and we'll get to that.
All right.
So now we're going to put Hunter into a 4-point position and reinforce everything that we've just talked about. He's going to put himself basically into a domed, basically spinal position. So what we're trying to do here again is coordinate the co-contraction of the abdominals by staying in an upright position or basically an inverted position. That's going to force his abdominals to fire, to hold his rib cage down. And now he's going to push through his arm on the left side, engaging the serratus muscle, the muscle responsible for holding the shoulder down and back. And then add his breath into the equation as he comes down and glide the arm down. So similar mechanics that we just worked on with that band behind us, but now we're going to put it into a gravity position and work the deceleration of the shoulder back into its fixed and pocketed position. This is going to help to increase the chronic tone of the muscles that help to pull that shoulder blade down and back so we can get it out of the ear and get it to lay flat the way we want it to. You'll notice again that he's breathing in as he comes up through the press and breathing out as he sinks back down.
And he's keeping his head in line with the rest of his spine, not letting that neck come forward. So he's keeping that nice and neutral, nice and slow and controlled. Soft elbow on the left, so he's not locking it out or hyperextending that elbow as well.
Yeah. He's doing a really good job of keeping a somewhat neutral, lordotic, neutral spine. So when he comes down, it's like a cat-cow position you'd see in yoga. He's coming in, doming the spine, breathing in deep, getting a nice deep diaphragmatic breath, breathing out, actively engaging his abdominals and gliding the shoulder around the rib cage. Teaching the rhythm of that scapulothoracic connection, where the way that the rib is in contact with the spine or with the scapula, is going to help to reinforce this on a neural level with the coordination of his breathing so that this becomes reflexive. If you do it right, you're going to really feel this. Again, a tendency we see is with folks, they'll excessively rotate through the rib cage. So they'll start to pull the arm or the rib up.
Like so.
They'll start to pivot through their back and their hips. We'll start to see the neck drop down to the ground, right? Especially as they sink, they'll come down and sink and the head will fall down. Or the shoulders will start to shrug up and you'll start overusing your upper traps. These are all things that say, probably good idea to pump the brakes, reduce the load, don't do as much, and work up to it. And what we would want to do is, again, about 2 sets of 20 repetitions. By providing that tension over the course of multiple sessions, we start to change the muscular relationships to help fix the joints where they belong so that we don't see this change our posture from our day-to-day activities. So guys, thank you for joining us. This was another episode of Design to Move. This was a little bit of a detailed one, so we appreciate your patience and listening to all we had to say. If you have questions on the specifics of this, we'd love to hear from you. Ashley would love to chat with you guys too if you have specific pain or injury cycles.
Yeah.
If there are limiting factors in the way that you can get into these positions, maybe there are pain or already injury cycles present,
Sure.
you're going to want to talk to her before you go into these type of activities. We try to give you a general understanding so that you can apply it to your own practice. But there's always a one-off, so make sure to reach out to her. And again, what was your website?
Yeah, if you need me, my email is ashley@pureyoga.us, and you can find more information on me at pureyoga.us, and then click the Pure Strength tab.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Guys, again, thank you for joining us. This was another episode of Design to Move. We want you to stay in motion, so keep on applying all the techniques and watch for next week's episode. We'll see you soon.